people who were discussing, is it heritage or hatred, right? And in this school, we have people who have viewpoints on a variety of sides. So the goal of Robbie and myself is to facilitate a community where we can have an open discussion that's civil, all right? So at this point, like, we're gonna open it up. I'm gonna ask questions, and anybody in here can speak, okay? But the rules of the debate are that you have to allow whoever's speaking to finish their thought. And there's not going to be any winner or loser. I mean, I don't think that anybody here is going to leave thinking whatever else different. Whatever you think is your opinion, and you are entitled to that opinion. But we want to keep it respectful. We don't want to get ratchet up in here. All right, we got Gandhi on the wall, for God's sakes. So what would Gandhi think if we got ratchet, right? Even though that word probably didn't exist when he was alive. So the idea of the Confederate flag for a lot of people is controversial. What I want to know is your opinion. Do you feel that the Confederate flag should be allowed to be worn or flown publicly, specifically like at a school like East? So thoughts. Anybody can open it up. I'm gonna give it to Drake Yost first, though, because I know he's a opinionated young man. What are your opinions on the Confederate flag?
Absolutely. That's First Amendment right. I think that people are completely misinformed about how the flag was, like, what the flag, like, what it's, like, how the war started. It's kind of evolved into, like, a racial thing when really it was not started as a racial thing at all. And I think that, like, it should absolutely be flown, like publicly.
Any other opinions as far as agreeing with him or disagreeing with him? Okay, Mr. Justice.
You do have a right to fly it. I do not think it should be flown on public property, like in front of a state house. You can also fly it at protests. But he mentioned misconceptions. There are no misconceptions about that flag. The flag that we see today is not actually the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is similar to that of the United States. It has a blue upper right-hand corner with 7 stars in a circle, 2 red stripes, and in the middle a white stripe. The flag we see today is an interpretation of a Confederate battle flag. And the interpretation went up in the 1960s, around the time the Civil Rights Movement started. And to the point where it's not racially motivated. Then how come it's a symbol for so many groups like the KKK and the National Socialist Movement, who, as you all probably know, have white supremacist and neo-Nazi ideologies? Also, I find it ironic that people claim to be patriots when they fly that flag. The Confederates stabbed the Union in the back. They shot first. They murdered 500,000 American soldiers. And they argued that it was because of states' rights. I ask, states' rights to do what? What were we considering getting rid of at the time? Not guns. We weren't trying to raise taxes. It was slavery. We were trying to stop the expansion of slavery to the West. The Southern aristocracy panicked and left the Union. They said, we are not Americans, we are from the South, so we're starting our own country. And then they proceeded to launch numerous terrorist attacks against the Union, shooting at Fort Sumter, murdering 200 people in Lawrence, Kansas.
Okay, now Chris, great points. I want to give him a chance to return. Are there any? He wouldn't want to put it out, right? Dropping knowledge. So, any opinions either with or against, Greg?
I do not agree with that at all.
And your reason why? He has a right to disagree, but
it was completely a war on northern aggression. North was making unconstitutional and unfair taxes on the South to promote northern manufacturers, because the South's main export was cotton. The Britain manufacturers were, like, doing better than the North, and so they were selling their goods cheaper here in the U.S. So the North had 5 times more population than the South, so all political votes would go in favor of the North, obviously. And so they voted to put a tariff, like the tariff of 1825 by John Quincy Adams. And that tariff put taxes and promoted the northern industries while also degrading the southern economies, which is unfair. And they didn't want unconstitutional and unfair treatment, so that's why the South decided to leave.
So what do we say to people who say that they find the flag to be insulting? In what way does that stand? Like, in here, who finds does anybody in this room find the flag insulting other than Mr. Justice? Okay, Why do you find the flag insulting?
Well, I think it represents a time when racism was huge and slavery was huge, and even if the war wasn't started because of slavery, it still represents a time where colored people were discriminated against, and so it's kind of frustrating to just see that.
Isn't it good to know about the past and respect what's happened, though? Whether you agree with it or not, you should know it and be knowledgeable on where our country came from. Because if all that didn't happen, the South and the North, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be sitting in this classroom. The whole realm of everything would be different. So I think it's a really important part of history that we shouldn't just throw away and get rid of.
Well, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question to go along with that, and then you guys can go forward with what you're saying? When you bring up the question of history and how it's important to recognize history, then in that right, would you say that it's okay for maybe a person from Germany to fly the Nazi flag and represent that history and say, well, we don't want to forget? Could you see why that could possibly be
I can see
contradicted?
we study it in school. You don't see many people flying the Nazi flag. I was just talking about the history part of it, that we should be knowledgeable. I didn't say we should or should not fly it.
But you think we should definitely? No, I don't think what the discussion is. We definitely have to remember that it's there, right? Like many people are saying, well, we got to put it in museums at least. But to fly it publicly, do you think that should be allowed? Neville, Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, I think it should absolutely be allowed. I mean, when you get offended by something, just because a small percentage of Americans get offended by something, doesn't mean you can take away their First Amendment rights. I mean, we wouldn't have any free speech if a certain amount of people got offended by something, because everything can be offensive.
Okay.
So.
Ramey?
I feel that you definitely have the right to be offended by the Confederate flag. Even now when you have like Klan meetings, they fly the Confederate flag. And so someone, like a group of people who hate minorities, not just blacks, but Hispanics, Jews, people from the Middle East, they have this ideology that you, as a minority, are lesser, then you definitely have the right to be offended, even if it was just history.
Well, I mean, you can be offended, but you can't deny someone the First Amendment.
I mean, I feel like that's also like hate speech also, and so hate speech is not allowed in the Constitution.
What is hate speech, you said?
So like at Klan meetings, I feel like everything in a Klan meeting is hate speech, and so I feel like the only reason that they are allowed to have these meetings is because it's the First Amendment right. But when you start to fully belittle minorities, then you shouldn't be allowed to fly the flag and have those meetings.
See, what I'm stressing is that you guys are misinformed about the flag's origins. You're saying that it's racist, but the flag is not a racist thing. It's been molded by our society to be looked at as a racist thing, when really it's not.
Okay,
Okay.
Sorry. I get that the history you might see it as not being racist, but right now, currently, it is seen as racist. The Klan have it, so I feel like you couldn't look at it as it not being racist.
Brittany?
Going off what Rainey said, so you said that the Confederate flag, the origins of it wasn't racist. That's not why they created it.
Yes.
But the origins of the swastika as well were not racist. It was a Hindu symbol for well-being and health. So that has transformed into be a discriminatory, bigotry symbol. The same thing has happened with the Confederate flag. So you don't see people putting the swastika up saying, oh, this is for well-being and health. And it's transformed and evolved as over time. So the same thing has happened with the Confederate flag. So now it doesn't mean the same thing as it meant when it was originally.
And to that point, that's the same thing we can say with the American flag. I think Michael brought up a good point about we have to recognize the history. We can't disregard the history. The history of the American flag is controversial too. There was one time where but now the flag itself represents a lot of other things. So we have to also recognize that what is the symbolism of it now, and is it relevant now? That's the question. Is it something that we need to be able to fly now? You want to speak to that?
I mean, let me think. Earlier, Christopher said that, wait, I had it in my head. I had it in my head before you said that.
Yes, sir.
There were so there were some Orthodox Muslim groups that would have 5 pillars, and they'd signify that whenever they did terrorist acts. I mean, there are so many good Muslim people out there that we can't just stereotype the 5 pillars with the terrorist acts, which is that's like saying just because KKK people use the Confederate flag doesn't mean we can stereotype all Confederate people flying a flag with KKK members.
Yeah, I was going to say that Christopher was saying that KKK groups and other hate groups were flying the Confederate flag, but they were also flying the American flag. So I don't think that that's a valid argument at all in terms of like evolving the Confederate flag into racism, because if that was the case, then the American flag would also be known as racist.
I think we're gonna let the professor speak once again.
Okay. Yes. Before the United States was what it is today, that did represent slavery and women not having the right to vote. But the thing is, we evolved. The United States has evolved over the years. Our founding fathers made it so we could change. When the Union was trying to change the way slaves were treated, the Confederacy, as I said, stabbed us in the back and murdered 500,000 people. And to your argument that the Confederate flag didn't start out as racist, I disagree. Here is a direct quote from the Confederate Constitution. Other than this one bit, it is exactly the same as that of the United States. Quote, no bill or attainder ex post facto law or law denying or impairing the right of property in Negro slaves shall be passed. So it says, no matter what, we will keep our slaves. If the Confederates really were fighting for states' rights and were trying to preserve the United States, then why is this the one thing that they changed? If this wasn't key to the Civil War, why is this the one thing that they actually changed?
I have a question for you.
Let's let him judge. All right, wait, let's calm down. Mr. Yost.
If you said that it was that the South stabbed the North in the back by seceding, right?
Yes.
If you're reading the Articles of Confederation, you'll read that it was 100% legal for any state or group of states to secede. If you'd read the rest
That
of the Articles of
article is
Confederation.
no longer relevant. We got rid of it after
why did you
Shays
bring it
rebellion.
up?
Why did you just bring it up
Why'd you bring
then?
it up and
Like,
I didn't bring up the Articles of Confederation. The
just
Articles of
did you bring up?
Confederation
We
were...
bring up the Constitution of the Confederate.
it up and
I didn't bring up the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation
We
were...
bring up the Constitution of the Confederate.
The Constitution of the Confederate States of America. The Articles of Confederation was the first Constitution of the United States.
Okay.
We got rid of it after an uprising in Massachusetts and have what we have today. The Articles of Confederation are no longer relevant.
all right, I have another question for you. If you're going to say that the war was started on slavery, what percentage of white Southerners own slaves?
And here's my other point.
That's 5%.
diverting from the question.
5%.
Let me answer that. Now, the South was controlled by an elite of rich white people. The elite was trying to make themselves more powerful by pushing the Union into allowing them to move their slaves northward. Here's what they did. They tricked poor Southern whites into thinking they were fighting for freedom, when in reality they were being used as cannon fodder in a war that only benefited the rich people in the South.
Now, before we go into a historical rundown, all right, let's bring it back to East, okay? So, looking at the debate, looking at the discussion, is it relevant for the East population to fly it? Because none of us here, I don't think, are from the South, all right? Or some of you may be, I don't know. But we currently live in, or we're stationed out of Prairie Village, Kansas. So to what extent, or what is the point of some of you deciding to portray it here? What is your rationale?
In my views, the Confederate flag it's a flag on, it's a you can't push me anymore, I'm going to retaliate. It's like the Gadsden flag from the Revolutionary War. The North, I feel that the North was doing unfair things to the South, unconstitutional things, and the flag was a symbol of, like, you can only push me so far before I retaliate.
And do you not feel that the current American flag represents that right for you?
Oh, it absolutely does, but the current American flag was also us seceding from Britain, or not seceding, but... So, I mean...
My question is, how many of us in here stand up under that flag and represent the United States of America flag?
I think all of us.
So, is there a need for another flag to be flown to unite us as a people?
Why
Is there a need for a Kansas
It's
state
not
flag or a
uniting.
Shawnee
It's,
Machine
the
flag?
Confederate
I mean,
flag wouldn't unite us as a people. I'm not saying yes or no to fly now. I'm saying neutral.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But you can still identify with it personally, your own personal opinions. When you fly that flag, you're not saying everyone around me this is who we are. You're just saying, I believe in certain things about this flag, and those things, I want to exemplify those to everybody else.
I'll go here and then I'll go there.
I mean, I agree with that. I think you have every right to identify with it, but I think it's extremely bigoted and hateful to do that when you are like aware of what it stands for. And you can claim that it stands for states' rights, but if you like took a history class, I assume you know that states' rights in the context of the Civil War were about slavery. Sure, they were about other things, but they were majority about slavery. You took a history class, you know that. You're choosing to be bigoted, and I don't understand that.
Mr. Shutt.
So why do you fly the Confederate flag or whatever?
I'm not saying this.
Okay. I'll take that as a yeah. Okay. All right. So why do you fly the flag because of what you said earlier that you can only push me so far, blah 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 blah. What does it like represent when you put it on your car or put it in front of your house or wherever you put it?
It represents you can only push me so far. I have a Gadsden flag sticker on my car, which is Revolutionary one, the yellow one with the snake. I think that they're very similar. You can only push me so far.
Georgia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say about what Mike said. He was just talking about how, you know, there were certain things that like he wanted to associate with the flag, but you can't really like only associate like your Southern heritage with the flag. You have to like associate everything. You have to go with the Southern heritage. You have to go with the slavery. You have to go with seceding, and like you can't, you know, take part of the flag and say this is what I'm for. You have to go for all of it.
You can't take parts of the, free speech and say only if it doesn't offend me.
Okay.
You can't do that.
Right. Yes, sir. And then I'll come back to you.
Well, people in the South, I feel like they've recognized that people may see it as it represents racism, but it just represents their whole culture as a whole. Like, they accept all of that. They accept that happened in the past, but they're not, that was their heritage. That's what happened in, their ancestors and all that. So they're going to keep that as, their family heritage.
And to your statement, sir, then what do you say to Southern blacks who want to represent their heritage? How do they feel about that flag? Why don't they fly?
Well, because it might have affected them in a negative way, but it could have also affected a bunch of people, not just necessarily blacks, but everyone in a negative way. So it should be a free choice whether you want to fly it or not.
Mr. Yost?
As Georgia was saying, we have to look at every aspect of the flag. And she mentioned slavery and stuff. She didn't mention the unfair treatment by the North, and also the. I keep blanking out. It was wait. I had something I was going to say.
But I think so.
It was. She said in schools what we're taught, everyone knows history is written by taught to focus on the slavery. I think if the other side would have won, then absolutely we'd be focusing on, we'd look at this North poorly.
And I probably wouldn't be teaching you if the South would have won. I'd probably be showing somewhere else. All right.
Can I have 3 examples of what else the Civil War was about that was not slavery?
This isn't an argument about the Civil War.
Okay, yeah, it is, because that's what the Confederate flag was all
I think so far we've had a pretty good discussion. All right, so there's no reason to get out of control.
I mean, I just feel like that's a legitimate question since the Confederate flag came from the Civil War. I feel like that's a legitimate question. What else does it stand for? What specific states' rights issues are you talking about? And how do you feel like you're being pushed? In what ways are you being pushed that you feel the need to fly the Confederate flag? Personally.
Mandated by the government.
Okay, in what instance?
Well, if we want to talk about how states' rights and how all this stuff, you want to have freedom in what you believe in, right?
Okay, specifically though.
Specifically, okay. So, not everyone is entitled to health care, but yet we think that everyone is entitled to health care. Not everyone is entitled to slavery because we got rid of that, right?
What?
Hold on. It's the same thing. Back in the South, Southerners thought that slavery was their right.
Now we think that healthcare is our right.
So you're likening slavery to Obamacare.
Well, we're talking about we're talking about big government. And we're talking about states' rights. You can compare the two.
Okay.
We're talking about what was moral then and now. Like maybe in 100 years.
Wait, let's go, Raymond.
Okay, so
Listen up.
I think what I'm getting from what Hayden said was that slavery was okay because they thought it was moral, but slavery was never moral. And so you linking someone to be able to go to the hospital and being able to afford their cancer treatment has nothing to do with slavery being okay back in the South.
And owning people.
Owning people will never be okay. And so I feel like when you say that you'll only take parts of the flag, of the Confederate flag, you forget that like it also acknowledges the fact that slavery is okay. And so I feel like if you say that someone's pushing you, like who exactly is pushing you? Just like Drake, like who are you, who's pushing you? Like who? How is the government pushing you?
Obamacare.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Is Obamacare directly affecting
Wait, no, I want to hear Lydia.
I think, honestly,
Quiet down.
Okay. I think like if you ever take a history class, they tell you that this part of our history is like a shameful part, and I think it should be left in the past because it's kind of irrelevant now. And I mean, if you want to like fight for your freedom, that's great, but you don't have to do that here in public because obviously it's going to cause more problems. Like than if you were just to fly it at home. Like that's your freedom of speech, it's your right, but like
We got a kid right here. We got a kid right here who's the one having his hand up all the time.
I have 3 questions for the Miss in the Green. What is your name first off? Okay, Isabel, do you pledge allegiance to the American flag?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Let him finish.
Do you know that when we left Britain to come over here, we took land from the American Indians?
Yeah, I do know that.
And do you know that also that the flag that we fly also kind of stands for hatred, and that we took land from other people, and that we've been living in a land that technically wasn't ours to take? So why are you only holding partial facts? Why are you only holding facts to the partial facts to the Southern flag when people fly this for freedom and they don't also fly it for people stealing from You fly that flag every day for freedom, but we can't because it only stands for slavery in your mind?
I don't take my flag and go on Indian reservations and wave it around and be like, look what I stand for. I don't do that. Okay, I don't do that. What Drake does and what all of you who wave the Confederate flag in front of any African American students at East, you're condoning that and you're openly telling them that you accept the racism that they have faced and continue to face by you. I know all of you that make fun of the we too are East thing, all of you do that. I hear you do it. It is absurd. And for you to sit here and be like, it's okay because of states' rights and try to condone your own racist actions is absurd. Like, that is so ridiculous. And you can sit there and laugh at me, Drake, but you are being bigoted. And I think, like, the general American population that, like, is actually educated would agree with that. Maybe not all of us here at Shawnee Mission East that live in this bubble, but, like, I'm sorry that you're gonna...
I think this is
Quiet down.